In this video, we'll learn about conditional formatting in Excel. Conditional formatting is a way to apply automatic colors and font styles based on different conditions to make even very large data sets easy to visually inspect. In essence, we can take plain data sets like this and turn them into dynamic dashboards for data analysis. So imagine you run a thriving small business selling assorted widgets online. Whatever software you're using for sales can export an Excel sheet of hundreds of recent transactions. Some customers spend big, some deliveries are still pending, some product categories are doing better than others. Without any formatting, it's just rows and columns of plain text and numbers. Finding patterns amidst this data is a difficult and time-consuming task to do manually, and this is where conditional formatting becomes one of Excel's most helpful features. It allows us to visually highlight the important parts of our data based on the rules that we define. We can see what matters most without reading through every cell, turning raw data into automatic insights. So here's the data set that we'll use. It's a table full of customer transactions from our widget shop. It tracks customer orders, amounts, and important details like order status, delivery deadlines, and priority levels. And it can be downloaded from the course website. So to start off, let's make a simple rule that highlights all of the orders where the status is pending. Now we could manually go through and do this to each cell, but instead let's have Excel automatically highlight all of the cells that we want to keep an eye on. To do this, we'll select the order status column, and then in the home menu, we'll go to conditional formatting. Now there's a bunch of options here, and we'll go through most of them in this video, but we'll start with highlight cell rules, and from those we'll select text that contains something. That brings up this little pop-up menu, and the word we're looking for is pending, so we'll type pending into this first box, and then we can choose which format we'd like to use. There's some predefined formats like light red fill with dark red text, or yellow or green, or we can even create custom formats which let us set all those values ourselves. But let's just take the first one. Once we say OK, we can see instantly that all the pending transactions jump out on the screen. And since we said this for the whole column, we can scroll through all of our data and see all of the pending transactions. And if new transactions are added that contain the word pending, Excel will color them as they're added as well. Similarly, let's say we want to highlight all of the bulk purchases. Let's say any order of 12 or more widgets at once. So if we select the quantity column and go to conditional formatting, we can highlight cells over a certain threshold using the greater than formatting rule. So if we click this and enter 12, and let's say with a green fill and dark green text this time, click OK. And now, at a glance, we can scroll through our data and see the large transactions immediately. So these basic highlighting rules are a quick and useful way to flag important entries in our data according to some known fixed values. Excel also has rules for highlighting the top and bottom percentiles of data. So these rules quickly compare each cell to every other cell in our given range and highlight only the top 10% of values, say, or only those that are below average, for example. So suppose we wanted to highlight the top 10 biggest orders based on the amount spent column. So we'll select the amount spent column. Under conditional formatting, we'll go to top-bottom rules. And then we can either pick the top 10 biggest items or the top 10% of items. We'll just take the top 10 for now. Top 10, and we will take a yellow fill with dark yellow text. And again, the large purchases jump out, oftentimes aligning with our bulk purchase data as well. So these kinds of rules are dependent on values that are dynamically computed in the background, either an average or a percentile. If any of the data in the column changes, then these rules will be automatically recomputed and the cells reformatted. This is especially useful when thresholds aren't obvious ahead of time. Excel can highlight above average purchase prices, even if we don't know what that average number is. So these highlight rules are pretty helpful for making individual cells stand out, but alternatively, we can apply styles to all of the cells in a range and have those styles vary according to the value in the cells. Excel offers data bars, color scales, and icon sets for this. So data bars turn our cells into mini bar charts, where larger bars are given to cells that have larger numbers. Color scales work similarly, but use the cell's fill color. So larger numbers may be more green, where smaller numbers are colored red. For example, let's format the entire amount spent column. So we'll select the column, and go to conditional formatting, and we'll go data bars, and then we'll pick a gradient fill data bar, something like blue here. And now the length of each bar visually represents the size of each purchase. And if we scroll, we can quickly see where the largest purchases are without having to read and compare numbers. If instead we want to use color scales, we can select the whole column and select color scales here. And we can choose which range of color we want to use. So we can say red for small values and green for large ones. And now we have red colored cells for our smallest values, yellow for the middle, and green for our largest, with everything else assigned to a gradient in between, making it easy to compare orders at a glance. Notice again though, we didn't have to figure out where the edges of our gradient line up with our values. Excel does all the tricky stuff like this for us and will automatically update if our data changes. Sometimes, rather than colors or bars, we want to use icons to give quick hints about our data. So let's do that in the quantity column here. Conditional formatting and icon sets. And these work similar to data bars and color scales, except with fewer buckets to group data into. So Excel will automatically determine the ranges for which each kind of icon will be assigned, or we can use the More Rules option down at the bottom and set the value ourselves. We can also select which icon set we prefer, or even make a custom mix in there. Now, as you layer more and more conditional formatting rules onto your data, it becomes important to manage and adjust those rules to fit your data accordingly. For example, right now we have two rules both trying to format the same amount spent column, which ends up looking a bit busy. So to fix this, we can use the Manage Rules menu. So under Conditional Formatting, down at the bottom, there's Manage Rules. Now the rules displayed here depend on your cursor's current position, so if you've selected outside of your data, it might show up blank. So if your menu is blank, or if you want to see all of the rules and it's not showing all of them, there's a little drop down at the top here that says Current Selection. If we change that to this worksheet, then it shows all of the rules that are available in our worksheet. Make this bigger so we can see. So here we can view all the rules at once. We can change their priority, which is which rule will win if two of them overlap. We can edit the styles or the rules themselves, or even edit the range that the rule applies to. We can also delete rules or duplicate them if we want fewer rules or more of them, respectively. For now, I'm actually just going to clean up all these rules. We're just going to delete everything, start fresh for the next section. Click Apply, and everything disappears. Okay, so now that we have the basic idea of conditional formatting, let's take a look at the real magic here, custom conditional formatting using formulas. So built-in rules are very easy to use, and they're powerful when they apply, but they can be limited to very specific scenarios. So if we need more control over our conditional formatting, we can create a custom conditional formatting rule. To start simple, suppose we want to highlight overdue deliveries. That is, deliveries for which the expected delivery date is earlier than today. So we can highlight the delivery date column, go to conditional formatting, go New Rule, and then down at the bottom of these, we'll go use a formula to determine which cells to format. So this gives us a little bar to type our formula in and the format that we want to set with a button that lets us change that. So these formulas are written in the same format as regular formulas that we just type into cells. So they start with the equal sign, for example. But the goal here is to evaluate to either true or false. If our formula evaluates to true, then the cell will be formatted. If false, then it will not. So if we want to format all of the overdue deliveries, we can use the built-in today function for the current date and compare that to the cell that we're looking at. So if our cell is less than or earlier than the current date, then it should have already been delivered, and so that will be true. So we say equals, now the first cell in our range is I1, so we'll say I1 is less than today, the function today. These formulas use relative references. So you can imagine that this formula is going to be pasted into the first cell of our selected range and then dragged with the fill handle across the rest of the range. When that happens, the cell references will be updated. Since we didn't fix any of them with the $sign, this means that the cell reference that you put into these formulas should be relative to the first cell in your range. So let's pick a simple light red fill for overdue delivery. So we click the Format button. We have options for the type of value, the font, borders, and the fill. So we'll just say more colors. We'll pick a nice light red somewhere in here. Red, light red, OK. There are many other formatting choices to play within here, but when we hit OK, the overdue deliveries stand out immediately. Scroll down here, we see that's pretty much most of them, though not all of them. So noting that the date of this recording is April 26th, that appears to work. So dates that are April 26th and later have not yet been formatted. Everything else, since this is a historical record of transactions, has all been highlighted. So our formula applied correctly. Notice cells that are empty, so have a value of 0, are also less than the current date, which is somewhere in the 45,000 range. So 0 is less than 45,000. That's true, so then these all get highlighted as well. So there's a couple of issues here. Thinking it through a bit, if an order has already been delivered, then it shouldn't be highlighted as overdue. Just because the date that it was supposed to be delivered is in the past doesn't mean it's necessarily overdue if that order has already been delivered. So it's just those deliveries that are still status pending and have a delivery date that's in the past that should be considered overdue. So let's try to extend our rule a little bit here. So we'll go back to conditional formatting, manage rules. We have our rule here, so we can click it and say edit rule. This brings us back into the panel that lets us change the formula for our rule. So now in order for a delivery to be considered overdue, both conditions need to be true, both the pending status and the overdue delivery date. So we'll have to join them with an AND function. We have two conditions, we need them both to be true, so that is an AND. So one of the conditions is I1 is less than today. We'll make that the second condition. And then our first condition can be the order status needs to have the value pending. So that's in column G. So to do that, we just say G1 equals, and then in quotes, pending. Notice again I'm using G1 since the first value in our range is I1. We're also going to be considering the first value in the G column, which is G1. And if we confirm our edits and apply them, we can now see that only those delivery dates which are overdue and in the same row as a pending status are being formatted. Now this data itself is essentially random, so we may not get a lot of real insights here, but given real data representing actual deliveries, this could give us a very fast way to spot problems in our pipeline. But unfortunately, only the cells in the delivery date column are being highlighted. If we want to highlight the entire row for records that match our condition, we'll have to think a bit more critically about what we're actually doing here. Now, as a bridge to that goal, let's first try to highlight the order ID when the record meets our formula. So to do this, we need to change the range to which our conditional formatting rule applies. So we'll go back to conditional formatting, manage rules, make sure we have our rule visible, and then in the applies to section here, we'll change this. We can actually just click this little button to do it with our mouse, and we'll just grab all of the columns, A through I, or you could type in A through I if you wanted. So now it says applies to A through I. Now Excel might change your formula here, so if it does, make sure you're still, yeah, here it is. So if it does, make sure you're still using the right cells. So this should be G1 is pending and I1 is less than today. So the same formula we had before, just Excel changed the references because we changed the range. So let's put it back to where it was. Now it's G1 is pending, I1 is less than today, and it applies to the entire table. And if we click apply, we can see the same rows are being highlighted, but now it's the first column in each record that's being highlighted rather than the last. So consider what's the difference between this and our last example. So we used the same formula in both of them, but we said it applied to our entire table instead of just the delivery date column. So to explain this, remember what I said about relative cell references in these formulas. Every cell will be considered, but the formula is written as though it's for the first cell in our range. So that's the top left corner here. So at this top left corner we ask, does G1 equal pending, and is I1 less than today? Now, since this is the header row, the answer would be false. But when the formula gets dragged through its range, the cell references are going to shift. For cells directly below our first cell, only the row numbers get changed, right? Because we're dragging downwards. So when considering our condition for, let's say, cell A8, we're asking, does G8 equal pending, and is I8 less than today? And if we look, G8 equals pending, and I8 is less than today. Both of these statements are true, and so the cell that we're looking at, which is again A8, gets highlighted. But when we apply this conditional formatting to cells that are to the right of our first cell, then the column letters are being shifted. This means that when we're looking at, for example, cell B8, so right here next to the highlighted cell, the G8 in our formula becomes H8, and the I8 in our formula becomes J8, which is off of the table. Notice that because H8 does not equal pending, our formula would return false, and so we don't get any formatting in cell B8. So the only time that our formula ends up being true is in this first column, where our column references haven't shifted, and so they're all still aligned with how we intended them to be. All of which is to say, if we want to highlight entire rows, we need to use fixed cell references in our formulas. So let's go back and edit this rule. Now we want the row numbers to change because we want each row to be considered separately, but in this case we want our column numbers to be fixed so that our formula is always referring to the correct category of data no matter which column we're in while we're asking for it. So we could just say in our formula here, click in front of the G and put a $sign, click in front of the I and put a $sign. Don't use the keyboard because it will add in other stuff sometimes. I have scroll lock on right now, so it's actually not going to, but if you have scroll lock off and you start moving the keyboard around in here, it's going to add extra data. So just use the mouse to click where you want to go and press $sign to fix these references. So now we have locked column G and locked column I in our formula. Now imagine dragging this formula from the top left corner to the bottom right corner of our data. As we go downward, the rows still change, but as we go across, we're asking the same question for the entire row. Is the G column pending, and is the I column past due? It doesn't matter if we're asking this from column A or from column X. It's always going to be saying, is G column pending, and is I column past due? The question will always be the same. This means that when our formula is true for one cell in the row, it's true for the entire row, and so the entire row gets highlighted. And if we apply, at a glance we can now quickly see which transactions need attention. Okay, and I'm going to leave this video on a challenge, which I don't normally do, but I want to make sure you've tried this out for yourself. Watching someone else build conditional formatting rules can make it seem sort of straightforward at times, until you start trying to type them out yourself. So, your challenge is to use custom conditional formatting to highlight just the category type for any orders that took more than 1 week to deliver. So highlight just this column anytime the order date and the delivery date are more than 7 days apart. For the formatting, you can choose any fill color or font style that you like, and you'll know you got the right answer when about a quarter of the results have been highlighted, which you can then verify the specific dates manually. Alright, and that's it for this video on conditional formatting in Excel, a helpful tool for enhancing pattern recognition and quickly bringing your data to life. So keep practicing, don't forget to blink and stretch, and I'll be waiting in the next video.